What up? It's Micah Peters, staff writer at The Ringer, and here are 5 more takeaways from this week's episode of Watchmen. Some are big, some are small, some are moderately sized. First up, the Watchmakers Son. Speaking of moderately sized, Blue Dick. That was another big part of the 2009 film Watchmen, is that you got to see a lot of all of Dr. Manhattan, really. But a thing I didn't really pick up on last week when Jeremy and I was just talking about, I've just written a new play and it's called The Watchmakers Son. I wasn't thinking about it, but John Osterman, who eventually becomes Dr. Manhattan, his father was actually a watchmaker. And towards the end of this episode, Adrian Veidt is putting on a play with his house hands, and it's about with the time that John Osterman got locked in the intrinsic field generator and got ripped apart molecule by molecule. That makes 4 or 5 nebulous mentions of Doc Manhattan so far. Maybe he will just be the big spaghetti monster in the show. Maybe we'll actually get to see him, who knows? Tales of the Black Freighter. Sort of how Ring Around the Rosie is actually about the bubonic plague. The game, the innocent-looking game that Cal was playing with the kids in the living room and Angela came back from the bakery, is a callback to something called Tales of the Black Freighter. Throughout the Watchmen comic, there's this incidental character that's reading a comic within the comic called the Tales of the Black Freighter. And essentially, Tales of the Black Freighter is about a person that does something terrible in service of the greater good. He literally builds a raft out of dead bodies, sails to a nearby village and starts killing everyone to save the inhabitants from some unknowable threat, which sounds a lot like Adrian Veidt, but also there's some stuff in there that could be about Doc Manhattan. Before he comes back, he's marooned. There's stuff about Rorschach because the Black Freighter believes that only he knows what's happening and only he can save everyone. There are a lot of different plot lines happening simultaneously in the show right now, and we're starting to get hints of connective tissue. So who knows exactly who the Black Freighter is supposed to be in this story, but chances are we're gonna find out. Hooded Justice. So we take a brief detour to like 1940 or thereabouts in this episode. There's a show called American Hero Story, and it's about a superhero or vigilante called Hooded Justice. Hooded Justice was the first vigilante, 1938, who I believe stopped a gang of youths from attacking a couple in an alleyway and then stopped a convenience store robbery, which we got to see. And he does both extremely violently. There's an undercurrent of repression in the Hooded Justice character as a commentary on why exactly these guys are so violent. There's a scene in the movie where comedian assaults Silk Spectre and Hooded Justice is beating the shit out of him, and the comedian suggests that maybe he gets off on this. And again, if you listen to the terrifying monologue in the episode where he's talking about, like, I needed some place to put this rage, the worst person you know had a point. A couple smaller ones. So there was the actual Night Owl mask, which continues the trend of every gadget that Night Owl uses is now a tool of the police department, when Angela literally goes looking for skeletons in Judd Crawford's closet and finds them. Also, we saw a copy of the New Frontiersman. The New Frontiersman is a right-wing rag newspaper in the Watchmen universe. Okay, so remember in the movie when Rorschach gets his big, teary, what's one more body amongst the Foundation speech? Before he did that, he arranged to have his journals sent to the New Frontiersman in the event of his death. Does the same thing in the comic book. Clearly the publication is still around. It is now a paper of record, apparently. And judging by the two guys' conversation back in the news truck we were just talking about, I read the news, I just don't believe any of it. No, I don't think that, massaging of truth or the malleability of fact is gonna be a recurring theme this season. Right, so that's all we got for y'all this week. If I missed anything, keep it to yourself. We'll be back next week.